network security, in particular the threats to computer systems and the networks themselves. You've got a quick starter activity, so there are 3 anagrams. They are all one word as well, so there's no spaces in the answer. I'll give a pause on this slide so you can have a chance to think about the answers. So in terms of what we need to cover off then, so we're looking today at the different forms of attack. So malware, social engineering, brute force attacks, denial of service attacks, data interception, and SQL injection. So we'll cover these off individually and we'll have a look at this threat that they pose and how they work. So firstly, malware. Now malware falls into kind of 3 categories. We've got viruses, worms, and Trojans. But ultimately, malware in itself is malicious software, and that's where the word malware comes from. Mal for malicious, ware software. So any type of software that in essence makes your computer perform in an unintended way. So it might be that it slows it down, it might well be that it causes harm to some of your files, it could be doing any number of things. And it might well be that these harmful programs are created with intent of targeting particular files or targeting particular systems, but can get pretty messy with your computers. So a virus works by attaching itself to a normal program and then spreading through your computer system, rather than like a Trojan, where a Trojan, if you think back to the Greek times where it's that sort of wooden horse being pushed up to the gate, it's from that sort of idea where it's a case that you have a file that's pretending to be something that we can trust when actually turns out to be loaded with malware. And then a worm's slightly different. So a worm is something that actually will affect a network of computers where it will spread from one device to another by self-replicating. So a virus and a Trojan tend to be sort of more focused on the individual computer themselves, whereas a worm is more of an attack over the course of a network. Social engineering. So social engineering is the idea that people within our systems are the weak point. Obviously, we have human nature, and there is bound to be sort of ways in which humans will give poor sort of security as such. So there's a couple of sort of key ways. So phishing is sort of the most prevalent one. Now, phishing is where someone might send out emails posing as a company in order to try and trick someone into handing over information. So this is quite common with people pretending to be banks and those sorts of things. They might send an email saying your password has expired or your network, your security has been compromised. Click this link to update your details, those sorts of things. And they're sent out quite sort of frequently to people in a kind of random way, but the idea is if they send out 100,000, then chances are there'll be some people that will fall for them. And then shouldering. Shouldering is just simply that idea of watching someone do something. So it might well be that you're looking over their shoulder as they type in their password or their PIN code to their phone. It could be their PIN code to their bank account, any of those sorts of things. And blagging, which is similar to phishing, is just that idea of not necessarily posing as a company, but it might be someone saying, hi, I'm a prince and I've got £300,000 that I need to transfer to the UK. If I use your account, then you can keep £10,000 of it, and kind of enticing someone. Or it could even be someone blackmailing and saying, I'm a friend in need and I need some money, posing as someone that you know. Any number of those sorts of things to try and trick someone, but it preys on sort of the human nature of people to kind of be intrigued or wanting to help. The idea with social engineering is just simply the fact that it's people that are the weak point in this area. Brute force attacks. Brute force attacks are this idea of trial and error. So it's where you would repeatedly try a password until you break into it. And this might be, for example, to get into a network. So you might have a password for the Wi-Fi, and it would be a case of continually trying varying different combinations of letters and numbers until you get into that network. And it might be the same as, for example, getting into someone's phone, someone's computer, any sort of device or any system which is password protected. It's just that idea of continually trying over and over different passwords combinations until you get in. Denial of service attacks. These are sort of known as DDoS, and this seems to be the one that poses the sort of most interest in the fact that it's probably would say that it probably gives people the most issues. So DDoSing or denial of service attacks is when you've got a whole collection of computers which are taken over or have a sort of infection on them. They may have had a virus that's been placed on them. And then as and when someone wants to run a DDoS attack, it uses all of those computers that are infected to create a network of computers that act as robots, hence this term botnet, that they will all then, for example, send a request to a website, and you might have hundreds of thousands of computers all requesting that same website at the same time, causing a massive sort of overload for the web server, meaning that the web server can't handle the requests. It'll eventually slow down. It could be any number of things. It's generally there to kind of jam a network up as such. Data interception. Now, this is referred to as a man-in-the-middle attack. This is where you might have someone on the network using a packet sniffing tool. So as data is being sent around the network, those packets of data that get transmitted from one place to another, as they pass through different servers, different computers. However, it'll be a case that someone will sort of make copies of those packets to see if they can sort of get any information from them, and then obviously forward those on to the relevant parties to continue with their hack. SQL injection. So SQL is the language that's used to carry out actions on databases. And if we think that databases might be, for example, all of the username and passwords, SQL injection is the idea that we can edit or update or tweak or cause harm to that database. And I kind of always tend to explain it in the context that if you think about at school, there are different levels of access. So you've got, for example, you as students would have the lowest level of access, your teachers would then have a middle sort of level of access, and the network managers would have the highest level of access. If you were able to perform some SQL injection to edit that database, you might be able to give yourself a higher level of access, or even add new records. You could be that you delete the records for the network administrators, and therefore rendering them unable to manage their network. There's any sort of number of things, but the idea is that it's running these SQL scripts, these commands, to kind of manipulate a database in an unintended way.